Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we decode the art and science of building a thriving coaching business. Let's see what's in store today with none other than the legend himself, Karl Bryan, and of course, your host, the Road Dog. Shoots, welcome back.
Yo. Road Dog, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing just fine, bro. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Recovering from my hernia surgery. I think everybody heard on the last one. Fifth hernia surgery on the same hernia. So not a lot of fun, in the words of the doctor, who's referred to as the godfather of hernia surgery, by the way. He said, he doesn't speak great English. He's like, very complicated surgery. So
Really?
actually, what I hear the best. So, when you're dealing with a pro and you can kind of just tell. So I go in to do the checkup appointment and he filmed the entire thing, right? This is like a 6-hour dealio, thereabouts. And he's got 6 hours of video. And then he wants to show me, right? And I'm looking at this going, is this guy serious? And he's, well, not, you know what I mean? Like, again, you're in the hands of a pro, but he's like fast forwarding to the highlights, like, here's this, here's that, here's where we lifted this. And then like it all culminates in the end where you got like this nice little piece of mesh laid out. He's very, very proud of it. And I'm like, hey man, I trust you, but wow. So there you go, Shades.
Well, there you go. I wonder if that's a new standard now when it comes to medical procedures of videotaping. I don't know. That's sort of next level. I know we always talk about, recording your calls and all that sort of stuff to get better, but this is next level.
This was next level. But again, what a pro, man. Like, the guy was excited and he's like, let me show you. So excited to show me. Anyway, there you go, bud. That's what's going on, my brother. What's going on. So
perfect.
Bro.
Well, listen, I want to dive right in. We've been getting a lot of questions, and one I really wanted to just nail right off the top here, and that is, we got a question when it comes to the differences between using urgency versus scarcity. Obviously, we know that these are two very powerful things that we use in marketing to drive people to make a decision. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, I guess, what's the difference, and then, like, would you use one over the other? Like, what are your thoughts on the differences between using urgency and scarcity?
Start with FOMO is very, very powerful emotion, fear of missing out, right? FOMO. So you should be using it. And by the way, Shoots, I may or may not have covered this in a podcast recently where you were, but anyway, so apologies to anybody listening to the second time. Or my explanation now, but bottom line, urgency is time. Scarcity is number of units available, right? So finding, I can tell you this, some of the biggest, some of the biggest companies in the world, let's just say that, okay, like the biggest brands in the world, what are they? We normally think of Apple, Disney, etc. And the biggest brands in the world are Harvard, Oxford, MIT, Stanford, etc. Like, they're not schools anymore. They're literally, they're hedge funds, right? But anyways, if you think, so what I'm going there, the illusion of scarcity is one of the most powerful things that you can come up with. Because think about when little Sally gets accepted to MIT, to Stanford, to UNLV, Harvard, whatever it might be. Where does it tend to go? Well, mom and dad go straight to Facebook and Instagram and other places and start bragging about it, right? And by the way, they get, for every 1,000, I don't know what the numbers are, right? But for every 1,000 applicants, I don't know how many people are accepted, but it's a very small number. Let's call it, 20. So it is, it's something else to get it, accepted to. So it is something they should be proud of. But the entire the entire university / college industry, where again the biggest brands in the world reside, the entire thing is built off the illusion of scarcity. So a coach not using the illusion of scarcity, that is a bad idea. So anywho, so that's my answer, Shoots. That's my answer. What do you think? Well, but the frame though, Shoots. Urgency is time. Scarcity is number of units available. That's the bottom line.
Okay. That's good. Good distinction there. Listen, speaking of things you may have covered before, you had sent out an email. I don't remember exactly when, but you were talking about something called the break-even point. And I just, I thought it was really good. And I just want you to explain the magic of this and maybe just sort of highlight what it is for people just so they get it. But again, I don't know how long ago that email was, but again, now it's my turn to apologize if stopped me for this one before, but here we go.
Break even. Look, this is a psychology hack, probably above anything else. Like, expenses have a wild propensity for meeting revenues, right? Like, it's up there with the 7 wonders of the world, like the Great Barrier Reef and the Great Wall of China, etc. So the solution of it lies in the ridiculously ignored financial education, right? So it's just it's psychology above all else, right? And so the solution is you gotta educate folks around it, but then they need accountability around it in order to get there, right? And like, what do I mean? Like, Facebook ads are way more sexy than the critical importance of math and business, right? And again, we associate math with grade school, and it's something a lot of us don't want to revisit, right? And it certainly was a bit of a battle for me. But once your clients gets their break-even point, they kind of get to this point where they start to roll downhill, like everything starts to come together. And the reason is that their profit increases dramatically. Like, so an example, you get a company that does $1 million a year and their break-even is 600 grand, right? I'm about to go through some math, but just really simply, don't get lost in the math. It's all so straightforward, right? So you get $1 million of gross revenues, and then break even is 600 grand. Okay. And then we'll assume that they're like an average operator and they have 50% gross profit margins, 20% net margins, right? Well, on the first 600, while they're clawing up to break even, they're going to make $120,000 of profit, right? It's 20%. That's where that number comes from. But on the following 400, they're going to make $200,000 of profit, right? And the translation is you got to control your costs on the way up, protect your margins, right? Like, what do they say in real estate? Location, location, location. Business owners, business coaches, business consultants, us directing small business owners would be very well served, and our clients would be better served by us going margin, margin, margin. And of course, there are nuances with companies like Amazon, which we've talked about so many times on the podcast, but we got to assume that the client's not Bezos and the business is not Amazon, right? So what they say is like stuff like, I can't get any traction, right? I don't understand why I got this profitable business, but I got no cash, right? They say all these types of things to you. And once they get this, right? And then often they don't just get it, just things start to come together, and then it becomes everything's falling into place. I feel like the snowball is starting to roll downhill. Well, what's happening is that they have created a dynamic where they are above break even, and all of the revenue that they're now generating is now falling into gross profit margins versus net profit margins, which in the example would be, what do they say? 50%, like they're making 50% profit instead of 20%, right? So break even. The bottom line is that when you the magic, okay, of break even is that when you start operating above break even, you're playing with gross profit margins, which are, always going to be bigger. And when you're clawing your way up, you're playing with significantly smaller margins. In that instance, it's 20%. Like, what is, in the words of Jeff Bezos, he says, great margin, great opportunity. And then he also, I should probably say this, which might counter what I'm saying, but anyways, your margin is my opportunity, right? That's the way he saw it. So if he saw an industry with massive margins, he saw an opportunity to basically claw margin. In fact, I was just literally listening to a case study of Southwest Airlines. So Southwest Airlines, again, huge company, hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever that looks like. I mean, so these guys, if you never noticed, like all of their planes are orange. The reason that the planes are orange is because that was the least expensive paint, right? Okay, so that's the level that they take, managing costs on the way up. But what they also, if you know Southwest Airlines, they're famous for free bags, right? Like that's always been their thing. Well, they recently just came out and said that they're no longer giving away free bags except for first class flyers and people that use their credit cards and, platinum level clients. And I got to tell you, that is that's a decision that I think they are going to feel wildly, not today, not tomorrow, because their margins are going to go up and they're going to look really, really smart on their P&L for a short period of time. But I think that you're going to find that, that's their market dominating position. And I think that it's going to, they have eroded it and they are about to erode that loyalty from their clients in a meaningful way. Huge mistake, man. Huge mistake. But anyway, so translation, there are nuances, of course. But we're not dealing with Southwest Airlines and Amazon. We're dealing with the local landscape or the chiropractor, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. And they should really understand this concept. I believe you should really understand this concept and you should help guide them through. So that's my answer, Shoots. What do you think?
You know what? It's a perfect segue because it sounds rather Zen-like. Your break-even point is like the moment of Zen of when the profits really start to compound. On that note, hit me with your best Zen thought.
Zen, Shoots. What is that? Wow, I tell you, I listened to that just recently, today, about Southwest Airlines. What was a video I saw recently? It's like your first 5 years, at the age of 5, your brain is wired, locked in, bingo, bango, bongo, right? So what really that says, if you believe it, and you may or may not, and I'm good with that, but this is what the science says emphatically. Your first 5 years dictate the next 80, right? So if you grew up with lots of uncertainty and chaos early on, you probably find you might be one of those individuals that's very wired towards chaos for the rest of your life, right? As in you're attracted to it. The good news is knowing the issue can allow you to solve it. The bad news is it's going to take rewiring of your brain from when you were 5 years old. And by the way, I'm speaking to you, but I'm speaking, to your clients, the chiropractor, the dentist, etc. And the rewiring of a brain is very hard work, right? So I don't know, is that Zen? I don't think that's very Zen, but anyways, it's like, here's something you mentioned my emails. I sent this out in the email recently and I got a lot of feedback, and people break rules for alphas and then people make rules for betas, right? People, you'll break rules for alphas and then you make rules for betas, right? Example, I'm sitting with somebody and they say, I never make a decision without speaking to my wife. And because I have done this for a very, very long time, I am able to combat that in a very real, meaningful way. And I can get them to break that rule with semi-consistency, right? And by the way, in some cases, I'm best to say, I don't want you to make that decision without speaking to your wife because, for some different dynamics that would have happened in the conversation. But that would be like an example in a sales situation, right? But what is the goal? You need to hold the frame of an alpha in order to be an elite coach. You want to close elite clients, not the struggling business owner selling, jewelry out of the trunk of the car, but like an elite 25, $1, $5, $25, $50 million company. You're going to have to be comfortable, not just comfortable, but you're going to have to position yourself in that alpha kind of position. Of course, you always have to be yourself. I'm not saying try to be somebody you're not. Don't try to be me, and I'm not going to try to be you. And Road Dog's not going to be me, and I'm not going to be him. It's not what I'm saying, right? But you've got. How do you become alpha? I'm not talking about being a jerk off know-it-all. That is not an alpha, right? You got to carry yourself with certainty that the things you're saying matter, that the things you say are going to hold true over the long haul, right? Like, again, I am going to help you become more profitable. And then you say that in a ridiculously meaningful way when you're sitting with a business owner scrambling a little bit and wondering why they're not that profitable. That certainty that is within you, not from your lips, but within you, will give you that alpha frame and create a dynamic. Like we've said this lots on the podcast, but that's like the groundedness of a grandfather, right? Nothing to prove, nothing to hide, in control, but not trying to control, right? It's like, when you need, I got a guy on Facebook, and I just can't believe, again, this is somebody who's out there as a business coach consultant, right? He's desperate for 15, he's desperate for X amount of money in order to like basically get off the streets, right? And I'm just like, holy, like it's really hard to come back from that from anybody who's seen it, right? Well, when you need money, can you get it, right? When you need clients, can you get them, right? And then when you have money, it tends to fall your way. And then when you don't have the clients, also they don't tend to be attracted to you, right? Like, in high school, good or bad example, if you had a girlfriend, you find that other girls were more attracted to you. All of a sudden, your girlfriend and you break up, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to go take up the opportunity on that girl that I feel like was attracted to me a month ago, 2 months ago. And often that opportunity evaporates, right? Good example, bad, I don't know. But I think that you'll find that's like 10x harder. In fact, last week, I talked about the Matthew principle that economists literally use it to explain how the economy works. And it's just like, to those that have everything, how does it go? To those that have everything, more is given, and those that have nothing, everything is taken, right? Like, again, it's like 80-20. There are universal principles that you may or may not agree with, but I'm going to tell you, they're the laws of the land. It's like the universe speaking, and you're not going to combat it. So needing nothing attracts everything is another way of saying all that. But the bottom line, Shoots, when you are in a coaching session, when you are in a sales environment trying to get a coaching client or a joint venture partner or build up a relationship that you feel might be very advantageous to you and your business, etc., that alpha frame is going to be a real important one. The accountant who says, oh no, I never recommend business coaching and business consulting to my clients. Like, I've heard that countless times, and I don't say I've always been able to overcome it, but I can tell you that I can overcome it, with consistency. And the reason is that I show up from an alpha frame with certainty, and I instill that certainty to them. So I kind of give them some of mine. The reason they won't do it is because they have been burned, because they don't think it's going to work, because they're worried about their reputation. They're worried about their clients, right? And remember, so maybe as I'm saying all this, and if you struggle with this, remember, in the first 5 years, your brain was wired, right? Like, so again, there might be a little bit of reprogramming necessary to grab all of that. So anyway, Shoots, there you go. That's, as usual, probably not very Zen, but there's my Zen thought. But
well, it's interesting because when you're talking about holding that alpha frame, it kind of, I don't know why, but that's kind of weird. But it reminds me of kind of like, when you love, like, say, James Bond, right? It's because you almost kind of see yourself in that character. Does that make sense?
100, high five, 100%. Like, if you love James Bond, you love Jason Bourne, you love Ethan Hawke, which happen to be 3 people that I love, right? Really, when you watch the movie, first of all, you see yourself in them, so you're 100% right. But when you watch the movie, Ethan Hawke, okay, and James Bond, or whoever you want to use as your example, Superwoman, etc., they're in total turmoil for 80% of the movie, right? Like Jordan was in total turmoil, winning, losing games, trying to win the division for an easier road in the playoffs, etc. He was in total turmoil for like 80% of his career, if not like 90% plus, right? Like, how many times did the Chicago Bulls win on the last shot of the game? And by the way, it was often Jordan taking that shot or making the pass in order, to mean like drawing two men towards him so that he knew that, Steve Kerr was going to be open. He shoots, he throws the ball to Steve Kerr. He's wide open. He basically sinks the winning shot. Right. So, okay. If James Bond, you mentioned, like if you're in turmoil, maybe it's a good sign that some really magical stuff is about to happen. Jack Dorsey, which I don't know that that's somebody I'm going to put in James Bond's category by any stretch, but he's the founder of Twitter, right? He says that, actually sent this through to my CXO. She loved it. Says you need to make every single detail perfect. And then you need to limit the number of details. Like that's it, right? So like every staff member, every role, every funnel, every operational procedure in your business, you need to make every single detail perfect. Of course, work towards that. Obviously, that's impossible, but hopefully you get the frame. But you got to make every single detail perfect. But then you need to be crazy diligent in limiting the number of details. I think that there is, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that is so good. And if you want to build something amazing, I think again, and could you call Twitter amazing? I would. So X, by the way, I can't even call it Twitter anymore. Elon Musk taken over. But that's it, and you mentioned like James Bond, right? Like in sports, makes me think of this, like in sports, things speed up and they slow down, right? Like Michael Jordan was pretty famous for affecting the pace of the game. Well, I would dare say that when you're really, really prepared, things slow down. When you're really unprepared, things speed up, right? Like I remember, back in the day when I played hockey, if I trained really hard in the summer, the beginning of the season, it felt like it took forever to make its way, right? But then when I was goofing off and drinking too much beer and carrying on, which of course happened, what I found is all of a sudden the season snuck up. You know what I mean? Like it's like speeding up versus slowing down, right? It's like when you feel that if you're playing baseball and you feel 250 ground balls a day, when you get a ground ball hit to you, it's like in slow motion coming to you at second base, right? Totally the game, the ball, the play totally slows down. Why? Because you're crazy prepared. When you loaf off and you used to do the ground balls and you're no longer are doing those ground balls, guess what? The ball comes at you at 2x the speed. If the ball's coming at you at 2x the speed, this, no matter how good of a second baseman you are, the margin for error or the opportunity for an error, the opportunity for a mistake, you drop the ball, don't get the ball out of your glove into your hand, fast enough to beat the runner. That's when it happens, right? So translation, what is the translation to that? Prepare, right? You've got to just, prepare. One of the things, like, if you watch a reality TV show, how do they start every show? And that's a recap of last week. How do they end every show? With a preview of what's to come. It's a really, really powerful way to run your coaching, and how I encourage people to do it, and why we built it on, our coaching portal, so that before the call, instead of being rush, in like 2 minutes, you can perfectly prepare for that call, because you've got all of the information, all of the data, all the files that were shared, what they, what you agreed to, what they agreed to, etc. What you spoke to them about last week. It's right, it's on the end of your tongue. Very, very powerful. And my experience is that most coaches are not preparing at the level that they should. Think of a live event shoots, right? You've run tons of them. You run a local live event, when you practice and when you're ready and when you're prepared, it feels like it isn't coming quick enough. You do not prepare, you do not practice, you do not do your homework. And what happens? It feels like it's clawing up on you. So if you want to slow down time, which most people will tell me that's a good idea, and I'm going to tell you it is, solution, prepare. So that's what I'm going to say, Shoots. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's amazing how many people don't prepare even just for prospect meetings. to go out and get the client of just some basic stuff. Look at their LinkedIn, look at their Facebook, look at their website. Just take a look. Just take 5 minutes. Like, it's really not that difficult, and you're going to feel so much more prepared heading into that meeting. So, speaking of preparation, boy, oh boy, your favorite topic of all time, taxes and finances. We got a bunch of questions here around taxes and finances, and I'd love to get into a pile of them, but can you just give me, this is such an open-ended, loaded question. Can you give me a quick tax or financial hack?
Okay. So quick tax or financial hack? Is that it?
Yeah, let's just leave it there. And that's already far too open-ended for me. I'm already very nervous where this is going to go, but let's just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I tell you, anybody listening, if you haven't followed us, the number one expense in your life, my life, Road Dog's life, etc., taxes, 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 taxes. And when you talk about the average, just taxes, the end. And then, by the way, well, the average, let's just say North American, somebody working living in Western society, it's taxes, fees, and interest. If you calculated all of that, you would be blown away. I always write, not always write, but I've mentioned so many times, it's the guy making $100,000 a year that buys the $100,000 BMW. And it's just like, no, you know what I mean? If he calculated the opportunity cost on that $100,000 BMW and the interest that they pay, it would be wildly crazy. And by the way, if it appreciates, you want to buy it. If it depreciates, you want to lease it. So that might be a hack. One of the ones I would say, like writing off your clothes. No doubt you could imagine, like if you depend upon where you live, maybe. And by the way, I'm not an accountant. I don't pretend to be an accountant. I don't play accountant on TV. So speak to your accountant about anything that I'm recommending or speak about. But like writing off your clothes, no doubt you could see. By the way, I just bought some new clothes this morning, so this is top of mind. But like, you get your logo pressed or sewn onto the garment, and you can now legally write it off. Again, not tax advice. Ask your accountant. And by the way, when you get them dry cleaned, you get them clean. Guess what? Tax write-off. Like, I used to, in the day when I, wore suits, which I don't really do anymore, but I used to buy custom suits, and French cuff shirts was always my thing. But I always got, like, my logo was always on on my suit. And by the way, I put it on the inside. I didn't put it on the outside for, I don't know that I wanted to have, focus.com, across the back of my suit jacket. You know what I mean? I don't know how that's going to look. Maybe a little bit of quiet desperation. So I ain't doing that, not recommending that, but it was always on the inside. Right. And instead of literally having a logo, like, it was actually like, the brand was actually like the name that printed it. Cause again, they were all custom, and that's what I wanted. Right. All my French cuff shirts all had, like, my name, the name of my company on the shirt. So that, but again, you don't need to get custom suits by any stretch, if that's a little beyond you. Not a bad idea to have a workout fit, by the way. But so anyway, that would, and you got to go to where you spend this. I'm using that. I imagine that you spend a lot of money on clothes. Your wife spends a lot of money on clothes. Your husband spends a lot of money on clothes. You got your kids' clothes, etc. Can you write them all off? No, that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. But you could write off significantly more than you currently are if you took that approach. And you just go, what do you spend a lot of money on? Right? You spend a lot of money on wine. You should be finding a way to write off wine. You spend a lot of money on vacations. You should find a way to be able to write off all of your vacations. Right? Like, you're working for money, and then they're printing it. And then you're getting taxed. You tell me if that makes any bloody sense. It's a little crazy to me. So anyway, that's, just something I'm literally talking about again this morning with a buddy. It's like, America is the richest country in the world, and it has like the highest interest rates for its citizens. And let's just call that 5% for frame, right? But you go to different countries, like, Switzerland as an example, Japan, there's a bunch of other ones. Look them up, right? And I'll give you a better idea than I could list off the top of my head. But you're going to see that those types of countries, like, have 1% interest rates, whereby living in North America, you've got 5%, and that tends to be in many cases on a bit the low end, depending upon where you're at, of course. Translation, be a little, be really, really, when you look at, inflation, I would say inflation is a tax from the rich, and they send it to the poor. So again, inflation and knowing it. And by the way, by me telling you that and you digesting it and you agreeing with it, which I hope you do, that's not going to solve the problem. But what's definitely not going to solve the problem is by not knowing, by not doing what Road Dog, like you're asking me that question for a reason. People are asking about it. We talk about it regularly because by understanding the problem, it gives you the opportunity to be able to solve it. Right. Like I've always said, like, if you clean your own house, right, and let's say it takes 2 hours a week, hire a cleaner to come in and clean your house for $50, whatever it's going to cost, $50 an hour. And then use that time, 2 hours a week, to study taxes, right? To go through your own expenses and see where you are spending money on taxes, on interest, and on fees, and where you might be able to claw a little bit back. And I think that you would find the $100 that you paid your cleaning lady or cleaning guy would be 2 of the most profitable hours you could ever spend. By the way, get your clients to do the same thing. Anyway, shoots, I don't know. That's if it appreciates, you buy it. If it depreciates, lease it. There are nuances to that, but that's a pretty good frame as you think it through.
Do you think, Karl, that the reason that the United States has some of the higher interest rates in the world, and Canada is no better at all, is because that they are far more comfortable assuming debt, and a lot of the other countries are more debt averse? You think that's part of it?
Built into the culture, man. I know. And should it be? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, you should only have to get rich once is a very common, you know what I mean? That's some advice that you'll hear for some very successful people. Yeah. So absolutely. So understanding where your money's being lit on fire will not solve the problem, but it will introduce the opportunity for you to solve the problem. Right. And are you going to do it today, tomorrow? Remember, a 1% improvement a 1% improvement every day over 365 days is a 37x return in 12 months, right? So if you studied taxes, a page of a book, 10 minutes of a podcast, 10 minutes of an audio, of a YouTube video on the types of stuff we're talking about here, in a year's time, you'd be 37x more knowledgeable, more educated to be able to control that stuff. And by the way, I'm speaking to you, but I'm speaking through you to your clients, because I know that this is 90% of businesses fail, right? We want to combat that. We got to go to the low-hanging fruit, right? Remember, we don't walk on the moon, we walk on the floor. You got to go to the floor. So that's my answer, Shoots.
That's a new one to me. We walk on the floor, not the moon. I love that. That's good. Hey, listen, speaking of things to study and work on, here's a tough one for you. Work with a client, and they're just wondering, like, what's the best way to deal with a negative employee? Like, yeah.
Oh, nice. I don't know. I might say next question, bud, because maybe I'm not the right guy to deal with it. But no. The best way to ruin a great staff member is to watch you put up with a bad one, right? And yes, there are nuances to that for sure, right? Like, how valuable are they? Maybe my first question would be, like, is there an underlying culture problem that leads to the negativity, right? Like, where energy goes, energy flows. So I would dare say to that, the solution, starve the negativity. Like, I'll give you an example. When I say that, so it makes me think of this, right? Like, so, like when I'm, my wife and I, right? So like, she gets mad, and what I do now is I don't want to say, I ignore it, right? It literally and I don't want to say it, I don't ignore her, and I don't ignore important things, but what I do is I just ignore, because I used to react to it, right? And by the way, this stems from my nearly 12 months off booze, and I'm still kind of off the booze. But I got to tell you that my wife would get upset, and then I would react. I would want to deal with it. And then you ask me why? Because that's a trait of mine that's made me millions of dollars in the business world. And I've been, rewarded wildly for it, right? Like when something comes up, I deal with it. I deal with it on the spot, right? But guess what? Doesn't work at home. And it just took a little bit of reverse engineering. My wife does not want to be treated like one of my staff members. And I know that's incredibly surprising to everybody listening, but like that, you know what I mean? Like that's just the reality. So silence, I don't know, silence is a powerful tool. Sometimes the loudest response is your silence. No reaction, just don't feed it, right? And then what happens next? Often, and there are clearly nuances to this, right? And big things need to be dealt with. And I'm not saying don't deal with big things, right? But that's not, a negative employee. I'd want to go to root cause with 100% certainty. And I got to tell you that when from my experience, when you don't feed it, it literally fades away, right? And it's the same with dealing with staff, right? Just give it no attention, give the negativity and give it, don't give it the attention and just keep going. As in like, don't feed it or it's going to expand into other things, right? That makes me like, who are the most successful people in business? That might be a better framework here. It's the ones that can take the pain, right? Because having something really negative and something jarring and something really painstaking, being able to just deal with it and just keep going. Like what does Winston Churchill say? Success is going from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm, right? Failure to failure with no lack of enthusiasm. That's his definition of success, basically, right? Well, the ones that can take the pain, right? Like how do you go about taking pain at a significantly higher level? Purpose. What is the purpose of your business? Because that's the domino that will knock over all the other dominoes, right? Like if your business has a huge purpose, and let's say, like Facebook, they want to connect the world, right? Like we're trying to establish the standard for the business coaching industry that kind of operates like the wild, wild west, right? Well, a lot of negativity with a big purpose will make it, I don't know, melt away is a little bit of an exaggeration. And again, I want to be clear, dealing with important things is what you need to do to be successful in business. But a little bit of negativity, this isn't sounding like something that's, major, right? So, who much is given, much is expected, right? Your staff's goals need to fit inside of your own goals. Okay. Translation, you got to have a big purpose, right? You have to create monster goals for yourself and you got to create monster goals for your clients, right? And by the way, and I believe that's what's your job as a business coach? Well, there's a lot to it, but one of those things is to creating that monster goal, that monster vision, so they can think bigger than they ever dreamed. And then that negativity, the minutia, the small little things just water off a duck's back and you just keep going, right? Just have high expectations for your staff. I've said this so many times, but the greatest gift that I can believe you give a child, actually, the greatest gift you give a child is unconditional love, to be clear. But one of the absolute best things you can do for a child is give them high expectations. Like an 11-year-old daughter, I expect her to do well in school. I expect her to go to school. I expect her to do her best. She plays hockey, right? Like I expect her to put in, and is she perfect? And am I perfect? Absolutely bloody not. But that doesn't mean that the expectations are not there, and the expectations do not diminish with small little outcomes. So translation, have high expectations for your clients, have high expectations for your staff, have high expectations for yourself without doubt, right? You find it's the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. And by the way, that purpose is the domino that will knock over all the other dominoes, right? And actually, by the way, profit. Remember, I built profit acceleration software. I didn't build revenue acceleration software. Profit is mission critical. You want to, 90% of businesses fail, and then you want to combat that. And I certainly do. I'll tell you, remember it, margin, another way of saying profit, right? Like profit, very profitable enterprise will make the staff and the sales and the marketing and the systems problems, melt away, as will a really big purpose. So I literally built software around that entire concept. So shoots, that's my answer. I think so. Maybe what we got to do is we got to do like a bit of an 80-20. How big of a deal is this, right? And like, how big of a deal is this little, bit of negativity with the staff member? Go to root cause, and then walk your way towards it. But I would dare say having a killer company with a killer purpose and a killer vision with a killer, CEO that is always big picture and, shows up no matter what. Remember you said it a second ago, you don't walk on the moon, you walk on the floor. Your business is going to be successful or unsuccessful more by your bad days than your good days. You've got to manage your downside. How much is scrolling on social media would be like templated, obvious example. If the CEO is spending all of his time or her time on Facebook, Instagram, and, putting, posts that are not moving the needle forward for the business. You tell me the level of respect that the staff members are going to have for that individual. So there you go, Shoots. What do you think? That's my answer.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I love how that just, of your good employees watching you tolerate a bad one. Like, wow, that is powerful, dude. Like that. Yeah, 100%. Hey, on that note, why don't you close us out with giving our listeners the one thing that they can implement and start doing from today's podcast?
What's the one thing? I don't know if we could ever go anything more important than reverse engineering your current, because at the end of the day, the goal for like everybody's looking to build a big business so that they can become free. Freedom is the ultimate. You buy the ad, you hire the staff member, you build the company. Why? Because you're looking to, get towards freedom. Why does the landscaper do the same thing? They're trying to get towards freedom. You want to get towards freedom, and reverse engineering your finances and potentially helping your clients do the same and looking at where they're spending money on, obviously taxes, which by the way, I'm not suggesting they don't pay their taxes. Not what I'm saying. Everybody should pay their fair due, but you shouldn't leave tips for the government, I don't think. But you want to look at taxes, you want to look at interest, and you want to look at fees. And remember, you might initially look at those numbers and they're not that exciting. So therefore it's not that much to worry about. But remember, those things compound over time, the same way that you're compounding, the eighth wonder of the world. Those things compound. So I would say that I want to come. So on the top of my head, though, like the Jack Dorsey in this video that I watched, right? And he wants to make every single detail perfect, but then wildly limit the number of details. I think that there's incredible power in that statement. In fact, it reminds me of, I want to finish with this shoot. So Tony Hsieh, the guy, he built Zappos, right? He's a billionaire. Unfortunately, passed away. He rest in peace. But a brilliant, brilliant business mind. And basically what he said, he wanted to create world peace. And then somebody asked him how he was going to go about doing that. And he said that he wanted to create not that he wanted his plan, and I have no doubt that he would have fulfilled on this because he was a next level visionary. He wanted to create 1 minute of world peace. And I remember when I originally heard that, I swear to God, it literally took my breath away. And I was like, oh my gosh, the power of that, right? Create 1 minute of peace. And then of course, two, what do you think it would be? It would be 2 minutes of world peace. And in his lifetime, I don't know this to be fact, but I believe that he realized that he probably wasn't going to achieve world peace in his lifetime. But by getting us up to 10 minutes of world peace, potentially an hour of world peace, that's how you create world peace, which if you think about it, that is, you talk about purpose and you talk about vision and you talk about allowing, your staff's goals to fit inside your own goals. When you've got a vision and a purpose and a drive and a goal that's that big, there's incredible power in it. And then you ask him how he was going to do it. And he said, yeah, well, I'm going to create 1 minute of world peace. It's a little shoots, I think there's a book called this, but it's how do you eat an elephant? And it's, one bite at a time. So it falls into the same, the same you know what I mean, methodology of that, but just incredibly powerful shoots. So that's a little bit like what Jack Dorsey's talking about, by the way. So there you go, man. That's my answer. How do we do?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Hey, listen, everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. And hey, if you're not on the inside and getting access to the pre-show, or you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or you just want more information on how to build, grow, and scale your coaching company, visit focused.com and subscribe today. And also, if you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe with a fellow coach, as we're trying to make our impact on as many coaches as possible. And while you're at it, please feel free to leave us a review. That is it for another week. We will see you on the next episode. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.